Hello, BookTube.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Book Brood. And today we are a little late on filming, but that's all right.
Better late than never.
You may have noticed we're doing a lot of catch up on the channel lately. So today we are going to do our March 2020 wrap up.
Yes.
So you had a lot of homeschool stuff that you read with the kids for homeschool.
Yep. Yeah. And we both participated in a readathon. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. I'll start with some of the homeschool stuff, get that out of the way.
Let's do it.
Okay. Just going to run through a few of these real quick. We read the Egyptian Diary, the Journal of Nakhet, the Young Scribe, by Richard Platt, illustrated by David Parkins, for our Egypt learning. You Wouldn't Want to Live Without Math, by Anne Rooney and illustrated by Mark Bergen. I really like this series. We have a ton of these and we're really enjoying them. And then Beautiful Warrior, The Legend of the Nuns Kung Fu, story and pictures by Emily Arnold McCauley, which was a picture book. So that's homeschool.
All right. So now I'll talk about the one novel.
Actually, wait, I forgot. We did read book 3, 4, and 5 in the series of Unfortunate Events. That was part of our homeschool. That was The Wide Window, The Austere Academy, and The Miserable Mill. And those are by Lemony Snicket. And we're loving this series, and we're just chugging along.
Yeah, right on.
Okay.
All right. So I read one novel in the month of March, or that wasn't sort of historical fiction or could be classified historical fiction, and that was The Promise by R.L. Mathewson, and that is in the Neighbor from Hell series. It is number 10 in that. Heidi loves it whenever I talk about these books.
I cannot believe you.
So this one, of course, follows one of the Bradford boys. This follows, Reed Bradford. And he is the principal of a middle school, and he has a romance with a old childhood friend, or that was, a neighbor, becomes a neighbor again because she moves back to her childhood home. And yeah, so that goes in typical Bradford fashion, having to do with lots of mishaps, wardrobe malfunctions, and food. Oh my God. Definitely. It was definitely one of the more enjoyable. I wouldn't say it would be like at the top. Oh, those ranking videos are really popular right now. I could do one of those ranking things. Mm-hmm. So that was enjoyable enough.
Awesome.
Right. Did you read anything that wasn't historical fiction?
I did. Right before we got stuck in lockdown, basically, because March was the month where we're in week 7 of lockdown right now. We're driving each other crazy. But I did one last library haul, and I just grabbed this whole trilogy because I've been meaning to get to it. And that is the Half Bad Trilogy by Sally Green. And I've heard really mixed things about this series, and it was intriguing to me. So I picked up the first one. I read the first one, and I got halfway through the second one, and I DNF'd it. This series follows a society where witches and magic exist, but there are good witches and bad witches, and our main character is half and half, basically. His father is the worst bad witch you can possibly be, right? And he's never known his father, but he's grown up with this stigma of being half black witch. And he goes on his adventures, and the government's trying to stop him, and he gets captured and tortured, and it's not great. I'm gonna say the series is not well written. It's not well plotted out. It's just, it's not good. The main complaint I hear from people, which is odd because people don't complain about it being like not well written. Most people complain about the lack of a love story, which could have happened but didn't happen. Like they don't get together, and that's what people like say is there's no happy ending for this character or whatever. But I don't know. Like I don't think that was the most important thing to talk about out of there.
The love story wasn't important.
It did irritate me that it was that the main character's best friend is like in love with him and keeps trying to like kiss him and like.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
And so the main character is sitting there like, wow, I wish I was gay, but I'm not, bro. So like, stop. I don't know.
But didn't he like kept going back and forth and would like experiment a little with him and like get his friend's hopes up or something?
No, I mean, he wouldn't like be firm enough about like boundaries, I guess.
Yeah.
And the friend kind of pushed boundaries too far, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Wow, that was too bad. I remember you started reading Half Bad and you got really sucked in and you're like, this
Oh
is
yeah, I finished
a
it
lot
in like
better
a
than,
day or so.
Yeah, you powered through it.
Of course,
And then the disappointment of the second book.
the font is huge and there's huge page breaks and stuff, so it's not difficult, but anyways.
All right, so now on to March Through History.
Yes, so this is the March Through History readathon, and it was hosted by ARG Schooling, and we'll link that below. And there were, how many prompts? 12 prompts, but I only read 2 books.
And I didn't quite follow the prompts. I just kind of remember her telling me about, historical fiction month. I was like, oh, okay, that'll just kind of be a theme for the month for me.
I think it was pretty laid back.
Yeah. So should I go ahead and start?
Yes, you've got more than I do.
All right. So the first one I read that might fall into this, it's more just a historic setting in a sort of pseudo fantasy world. But this is The Traitor Queen by Danielle L. Jensen, and this was the Bridge Kingdom book number 2. In 2019, I read The Bridge Kingdom, which was book number 1, and I loved it. And it was in my most enjoyable reads of 2019. We'll link that video below. And I was so excited to move on with that series. And when I looked it up on Goodreads, it hadn't been published yet, and I was just we all know that feeling, right? So it came out in February, and I, like the end of February, and I read it in like 2 days or something like that. So everything worked out. So it's the story of...
Everything ended well.
Yes. So it is the story of a princess from the evil kingdom being betrothed to the king of the good kingdom. And the first book ended with them having a falling out and her plans of betrayal that she thought she had undone. She thought she had sabotaged and fixed everything when she realized she was in love. Apparently something still slipped through, and the king found out, and he was not happy. He exiled her and actually was captured by her father, who is the king of the bad country. So this one was kind of a rescue, then a road trip, then saving the kingdom, but then rekindling that brief love that was there so briefly in the first one.
Wow.
Yes, so that one was awesome.
Good.
Totally recommend that for anyone that likes a romance in a sword and boats, lots of boats. So
I always
Mabel
think mermaids whenever you talk about the Bridge Kingdom. Like, I don't know why.
Well, there's lots of ladies that swim, but there's no mermaid.
But
There's
no
sharks.
mermaids.
There's lots of sharks. Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll enjoy it once you read.
Perfect.
I'm not sure what kind of prompt that would fit into.
I think it could fall into historical fantasy, or is it medieval? Like swords?
Yeah, but I've got another one that fits more into medieval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Historical fantasy.
Yeah. So, how many did you have?
Two to talk about.
Okay, so I will continue going. The next thing I read was The Rise and Fall of Dodo by Neil Stephenson. This is a time travel story where these academic researchers, this academic researcher is recruited by this military officer to do research into specific, to do translations of specific documents and scrolls and things that were found throughout history. And the scholar, she finds out that they're all having to do with magic, like historical accounts of magic being real. And they discover that at one point in time, magic was a real thing, but then it just all of a sudden became impossible at one point. So they go through some sleuthing and figure some things out, and they build a machine where essentially magic can work again in the modern times. And they end up by chance finding a witch. And this, in Neil Stephenson fashion, has all sorts of different plot threads going here and there. A lot of this is actually mixed format, is that what they call it?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Emails, things like that. And you find that it's one of the tech guys had just randomly tried to download a whole bunch of information off of the Dodo servers at one point in the book. So a lot of the book is those personal emails and stuff like that, and so you get some quirky back and forth of between just the personnel there being snippety with each other and things like that. But this one actually ended on a cliffhanger. This is definitely one of the better Neil Stephenson. I like just about everything that he's done, but it was really enjoyable all through the reading, which is not always the case with his. In fact, they have some peaks and valleys in the actual read through, but very, very good. And there's a fun little thing in there about how this person back who lived during Shakespeare's time has this huge rant about how everything that Shakespeare did was just an insult to the Irish and how he hated the Irish. So that's
nice.
Yeah, that was very comedic and almost worth the whole read just for that.
I wonder, would that fit in mystery thriller, historical mystery?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing I read was For the Love of Hades by Sasha Summers, and that is book number 2 in the Loves of Olympus. I read this one on ebook through Scribd. I am a big sucker for a Hades and Persephone retelling. I know that's kind of,
You're not the only one.
that I admit that's probably one of the worst romantic romance reading traits about me is I love the romanticization of that story. I know. You can.
So does Sam from Thoughts on Tones.
You
So
can grill me in the comments below. But typical retelling, romanticized retelling of them actually being very much in love, and just the natural forces of the Olympus, gods of Olympus, trying to keep them apart and things like that. But yeah, it was good enough. I took a long time to read that one, so I just ended up actually just finishing it in March.
Nice.
Yeah. So I have 2 left now.
All right, so I will talk about one. I read Perfume, the story of a murderer by Patrick Suskind. I think that's how you pronounce it. I read this, and then I actually went and watched the TV series. I was looking for the movie, but I stumbled upon like the I think it was in German TV series, and I really enjoyed that. So Perfume, it's a classic horror. Reminded me a lot of Frankenstein, actually.
Yeah, that does have a lot of parallels, doesn't it? Yeah.
The story follows a man who is born with an interesting quality. He doesn't have any scent of his own, but he has an extremely strong sense of smell. And this lack of a scent makes people around him really uncomfortable, even though they can't like pinpoint why. They just really cannot stand to be near him. So he's very much ostracized. And also he doesn't really care about people. He mentally catalogs all of the different scents that he encounters throughout his life, and will like mix the scents in his mind, like making imaginary perfumes or whatever. And he goes on to work for a master perfumer. And actually he goes through life and everything's very dull. He kind of hates everything. He seems to like just be in a trance most of his life until he gets this smell. He follows it through the city, and he's overwhelmed with just absolute bliss at the wonderful smell that he's experiencing. And he like blacks out, and when he comes to, he realizes he's murdered a young woman, and it was her scent. And he gets kind of obsessed with this idea of, can I bottle this scent? Can I keep this scent? And so, you know, it leads to him murdering other women and trying to create a perfume out of them. And I think why it reminded me so much of Frankenstein was there was a huge portion of it where he goes off into the wilderness and he leaves all of humanity behind, and he lives in a cave for years by himself, and he just lives in his mind, and he's just like imagining just, you know, all of his different scents and stuff, and then being very ostracized by humanity. Anyways, I've rambled. This was a good book. The TV series was actually only kind of inspired by the book. It didn't follow the book. The TV series follows a group of kids who read the book and then were inspired to like try and do it too. And then it follows them as adults, and one of them has been murdered in a way that looks like what the man from the book would have done to like turn them into perfume, right? And so they're like, who did this? Which one of you did it? You know, and it's a mystery trying to solve, you know, who did it.
Fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed the experience.
Cool. You were talking about how he spent time out in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that part of the movie, and it really glossed over the length of time, or didn't really give you a sense of the length of time that he was in the wilderness.
I wish I could have found the movie. I don't really remember all the details because we watched it like 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
All right. The next thing I read was a reread for me, and that is Rendezvous with Yesterday by Diane Duvall, and that is the Gifted Ones Book 2. So this is the Immortal Guardians prequel books. This has to do with a woman from current times, ends up in a gunfight because she and her brother are bounty hunters, and things go wrong and she gets shot up. But then she wakes up completely healed in a forest that she does not recognize. And she eventually realizes that she is in medieval Europe. And and so it goes from there, and she's found by Sir Robert, the Lord of Westerly. And they have their adventure of falling in love, and it just kind of barely ties into the overall series. Some of the other main character from the first Gifted Ones book, Alyssa, comes into this story a little bit because she's the sister-in-law of Lord Robert. But it's a lot of fun, just the whole displaced in time. This woman's from Texas, and she doesn't take no crap from anyone. So all these knightly men who are trying to do things for her, you know, and she's telling them to, like, you know, shut up, and like is slapping their hands and things, and she's wearing breeches, for goodness sakes.
Oh,
You know?
man.
So that's just a lot. That's the main point of fun for that one is the modern woman going back to medieval times and not taking crap from anyone.
Nice.
So,
well, that is a historical medieval
yes.
story. You're crushing this. All right, the last one I read is The Fair Fight by Anna Freeman. And this, I guess, could qualify for a book with a gown on the cover and a book with LGBT rep. Wait, I'm trying to remember. Maybe not. I read this because I thought it did have LGBT rep in it. And then it actually didn't really turn out to be that. This story, I actually really loved this one. This story follows 3 different women. The main character is born into a brothel, and then her and her sister grow up, and then when they're 12, it comes time to, like, all right, how are you going to start making money for the family? Her sister ends up working in the brothel, but everyone tells her that she's too ugly to make any money, which she's really happy about, clearly. And she actually stumbles into becoming a bare-knuckle boxer. And so she's forced to fight to make her money. But she's like this 12-year-old scrappy little kid, and mostly it's she has to fight like older men, right? It's mostly just a comedy, like watch this little girl get beat to a pulp, you know, type thing. And there's a lot of betting, and then the other woman that it follows, so it follows her and it follows her sister who becomes a prostitute. And then it follows another woman who is forced into a loveless marriage, and she's a proper lady. And the first half of the story, they're all very much being held down by, like, powerful men in their lives. And then the second half is, like, them coming into their own and, like, figuring out how to get some of their own power and really take control of their story and their destiny. And I really enjoyed this story.
It had some really cool parts that you were telling me about.
Yeah.
In there. Yeah, I might have to pick that one up eventually. Yeah. Okay, the last book I read in March was Emma by Jane Austen.
Aww.
This one is a reread for me. I really like this one. I think of the Jane Austen I've read, I'd say probably it's number 3, maybe. But I forgot how much of an absolute brat Emma was in the beginning of the story, just how intolerable she could be, and just how stuck up and
I remember you listened to a bit of this on one of our car trips. And yeah, I only heard that first part of her being stuck up. Like, I didn't get to hear her redemption.
It almost takes till the end. Like,
really?
She just goes through some really horrible decision making to get to her redemption. But very enjoyable. The characters, the Knightley family is great. Jane Fairfax. Oh, Jane Fairfax. is great. Just Austen is amazing. The back and forth that she creates with her characters, the interaction. She is such a comedian. I don't think I didn't realize, definitely. I mean, I watched the Pride and Prejudice miniseries and things like that and found it funny, but I didn't realize that comedy was like a key or just such a big part of all of her writing and just such satire on the time. So very enjoyable read there. Great one to round out the month with. And I was doing it on audio on YouTube, and when it ended, it just automatically kicked me over to Pride and Prejudice, and I was like, 30 seconds in, it's like, well,
I've already started.
might as well.
Awesome.
All right, so that is our March
Yes.
wrap up for 2020. If you wanted to give us any comments on the things we read, want to comment about things you read, go ahead and do that below. Please subscribe to our channel, and yeah, we will see you later, guys.